A good narrative Shabbos, everybody. We'll begin with the Birchas Kohanim. Vayedaber Adonai Moshe Lemor, Daber Alar V'Albanav Lemor, Kesevarechu Es Bnei Yisrael Amar Lahem. Yivarechecha Adonai V'Yishmerecha, V'Yoyer Adonai Panav Elecha V'Chuneka, Yisa Adonai Panav Elecha, V'Yosem Lecha Shalom. Somewhere Shemi al B'nei Yisrael v'Ani Avarachem. May it indeed be a blessed week, a week filled with miraculous blessings for each and every single one of us, for Klal Yisrael and for the entire world. I begin with a few quick announcements. This Sunday morning, 9 o'clock Pacific time, 12 o'clock Eastern time, we're going to have a moment of pause, a pause for prayer, and try to unite people from all over the world, literally every single continent on the face of the earth, to come together for 30 minutes of prayer. We have Chief Rabbi of Israel, Rabbi Yisrael Meir Lau, will be joining. One of the greatest cantors of our time, Cantor Helfgott, will be joining us. We'll hear from Rabbi Moshe Bryski from New York. For 30 minutes, we're going to join together in unison and in prayer. The way to log on, I've sent out the emails. I'll send out a reminder again Sunday morning with the link, so you could just press a button and join together. It's chabadconejo.com/pause, the number 4A prayer. But again, you don't have to memorize it. We'll be sending you out the emails and reminders. We sent it out today. We'll send it out again on Sunday morning. And then on 11 o'clock, also this Sunday, if you have any children or grandchildren at home, we're going to have a special Zoom Sea Kids program about the holiday of Shavuot. That will be at 11 o'clock. The link to that you can find on jewishacademy.com/weekly. One other announcement before I begin today's sermon. Starting next Friday, I'm going to move up the sermon from 4 p.m. to 3 p.m. So we're going to be doing it at 3 o'clock instead of 4 o'clock, because we've had quite a few requests from the East Coast that they would like to join as well, and it comes up right up to Lichbenchen time. So this way, if we do it at 3 o'clock, it's 6 o'clock on the East Coast, and some of our East Coast friends could join with us for the sermon. I'm going to do something a little bit different today. I do this every once in a while in our shul, where I want to study together with you a verse from the portion, actually using the text inside. I want to set the scene for you. It's the two portions this week. It's Bahar and Bechukosai. This week we finished the book of Vayikra, the book of Leviticus. So it's also called Shabbos Chazak. At the end of the reading of each book, we say Chazak, Chazak, V'nis Chazek, that we should indeed gain strength from the conclusion of the study of a book of Torah. So therefore the entire Shabbos is called by the name Chazak, that we are giving strength and we're blessed with strength. In the ending of the book of Leviticus, the portion of Bechukosai, there are some quite difficult verses, because there God says that I presented before you the covenant, the Torah, and all the mitzvahs. And if it comes to pass, and he predicts that it will come to pass, that we will violate the covenant and we will rebel against God, so we're going to be banished from our land, and we'll lose the privileges to the holy land of Eretz Yisrael, and we'll be thrown into exile. And exile living for the Jewish people is not going to be luxury living. It's going to be quite difficult life. And the portion goes on to talk about the consequences of what life is going to be like, banished in exile. And we know we've been there for thousands of years, and it's been a very, very difficult period of time. And the Torah will go on in the portion of Bechukosai in some extremely painful verses, talking about what the suffering of exile will be like. And indeed, Jewish history has unfortunately lived up to these verses, and we've actually lived through them. And after all these painful verses, a very difficult chapter of the Torah goes ahead and says, but then at some point you will return, that we will come back to God, which means the covenant is never over. There may be a period of exile, and there may be a long period of exile, and there may be a very dark period of exile, but don't confuse exile with divorce. There may be a period of separation that we're going through, some marriage difficulties that we go through in our relationship with God, but the relationship is never over. And then we will always have the ability to come back to God, and God will embrace us, and God will love us once again, and we will then see all the miracles once again, as our forefathers saw, the forefathers that came out of Egypt, that stood at Mount Sinai, that went through the splitting of the sea, that entered the land of Israel. And we will be fortunate to see these miracles as well. And so I want to take you to chapter number 26, to verse number 42. And Chana, who is our co-host, if you can put up verse 42 on the screen. Let's see if we can get that. There we go. There we go. We have it. That's Vayikra chapter 26, verse 42. You see it in front of you. This is an extremely powerful verse. It says, V'zacharti es berisi Yaakov, I will remember my covenant with Jacob, V'af es berisi Yitzchak, and also my covenant with Isaac, V'af es berisi Avraham Esker, and also the covenant I made with Abraham I will remember. V'ha'aretz esker, I'll remember the promises made about the land. So again, this is after some very difficult verses, God says, but you're going to come back, and the relationship will be once again strong, and the marriage will once again be strong. And he tells us in this verse, I'm always going to remember the promises and the covenant that I made with the patriarchs. I'm going to remember the covenant I made with Jacob. I'm going to remember the covenant with Isaac and with the covenant with Abraham. And the verses will then continue from this point on, verse 43, 44, to talk about once again the re-embracing of God of the Jewish people. So our exile is never meant to be a permanent exile. There will always be the reunion and the coming back to the covenant. Now I have up on the screen, you'll see highlighted in yellow on the Hebrew side, you see the word Yaakov. You all see it? Okay, it's highlighted. If you look closely at the word and you're slightly familiar with Hebrew, you will note that the name is misspelt. It says Yud, Ayin, Kuf, Vav, Vez. Those of you that know the spelling of Yaakov will know that when we write out the word Yaakov, we do not have the Vav between the Kuf and the Vez. It's Yud, Ayin, Kuf, Vez, and here we have an extra letter, we have the Vav. There's no mistakes in the Torah, and therefore if the Torah is misspelling a word, there's a reason for the Torah placing that extra letter in that word. And so we will look into Rashi, what Rashi has to say on the misspelled name Yaakov, and I'll study it together with you here. B'chamisha mekomos nichtav malei. There are 5 places in the Torah where we find Yaakov spelled this way. Usually Yaakov is spelled the way I told you. There are 5 places. This is one instance, and the other examples would be in the book of Jeremiah. There too, it is spelled with the extra vav like we have here, 5 times. Why? Ve'eliyo chaser b'chamisha makoma. Says Rashi, you know, it's all odd. There are 5 times that we will find in the Bible, in the books of the prophets, in the book of Kings, and in the book of Malachi. The most famous of all prophets is the prophet Elijah. There are 5 occasions where we will find Elijah's name misspelled. 5 times Jacob's name is misspelled. 5 times Elijah's name is misspelled. Is there a connection? Obviously there is, or I wouldn't be mentioning it. What's interesting is that when Elijah's name is misspelled, it doesn't have an extra letter. It's missing a letter. What letter do you think is missing on 5 occasions when Elijah's name is mentioned? Guess which letter it is? It's the letter Vav. That same letter that is added to Jacob's name on 5 occasions is missing from Elijah's name on 5 occasions. Says Rashi, an interesting comment. Yaakov notal ois mishmoi shaliyahu aravon. Yaakov went ahead and he kidnapped, he stole the letter Vav from Elijah 5 times. He took the letter Vav from Elijah and he's holding on to it. You see, it's trapped in the middle of his name. That Vav belongs to Elijah. But Yaakov took it. And the reason he took it was he took it as an eravon, as a guarantee. Sheyavoy v'yavaser ge'ulas banav. He says to Elijah, I'll give it back to you when you fulfill your role and your mission of coming and letting the world know that Moshiach is here. So when you do your job, when you come and be mevaser the geula, inform the world that the redemption is here, I'll give you back your vav. But until then, I'm holding on to it. So Yaakov, the patriarch of the Jewish people, the one whose name was also Yisrael, goes ahead and says to Elijah, you're not complete until you complete your mission. When you take care of my descendants and you inform them of redemption, then you'll be complete. Why 5 times? Why does he do it on 5 occasions? There's 2 reasons. One is when we take an oath, we take an oath on a Torah. The Torah is made up of the 5 books of Moses. And therefore, he's telling Eliyahu, you have an oath as if you took an oath on the Torah on the 5 books of Moses. And you will only be exempt from this oath when you fulfill it, when you do your job. Secondly, as far as why is 5, why the number 5, and that is because this was a handshake between Jacob and Elijah. And a handshake is done with the 5 fingers. And therefore, Jacob says to Elijah, let's shake on it. Do we have an understanding? Do we have an agreement that you'll get your name complete? You'll get your vav back in your name when you fulfill your task, when you do your mission. So that's one beautiful part of, after all of these negative verses and difficult verses to read about the consequences that will befall the Jewish people, we immediately talk about Mashiach's coming, and we talk about the redemption, and we talk about Elijah coming. Another noteworthy part of this verse, and this is, I used the other color, the bluish color, to highlight. Let's look at the Hebrew again. You see in the very first word of the verse, you see the word vizacharti. In that word zacharti, you have the word zachar. You're familiar with that word because it's used more than any other word in the Torah. It means to remember. Vizacharti, says God, I will remember. From the word yiskar, to remember. So he says to us in this verse, in verse 42, I will remember. What will God remember? The covenant of Jacob. Okay? Continue reading the sentence with me. Oh, and also my covenant with Isaac. Now continue reading it. The af es berisi Avraham esker. And also my covenant with Abraham, I will remember. How many times does it say the word remember when it comes to the patriarchs? It says the word remember by Jacob. It says the word remember by Abraham. You see, when he talks about Isaac, he doesn't use the word remember. He says, and also my covenant with Isaac. But there's no mention there of that word zachar, that I will remember Isaac. It seems like he's saying, I'm going to remember Jacob, I'm going to remember Abraham, and Isaac, okay, you too. But he doesn't use the word I remember when it comes to Isaac. Why not? Again, we turn to Rashi and Rashi's commentary. And Rashi tells us a very interesting thing. Rashi explains to us that you use the word remember when you do not have something in front of you. You don't use the term remember when it's right in front of you. I won't say, I remember I am wearing a black jacket. I don't remember. I see I'm wearing a black jacket. I could say, I remember a week ago I wore a blue jacket. Because it's not in front of me, I use the term remember. But the term remember cannot be used about something that's right in front of you. Something that's right in front of you, you don't remember, you know. He remembers Jacob, he remembers Abraham, but he won't use the terminology remember by Isaac, says Rashi. Why? Because the ashes of Isaac sit in front of God at all time. The ashes of Isaac, from the story of the binding of Isaac, is put right in front of God, remains right in front of God, so he's not going to use the term remember when it comes to Isaac, because it's right in front of him. So af es berisi Yitzchak, and the covenant I made with Isaac, he doesn't have to say remember, because he's always looking through the lenses of Isaac. Isaac is in front of him all the time. Which leads to the obvious question. The obvious question is, one second, I studied that story of the binding of Isaac. He was never offered and slaughtered. He was offered and then taken off the altar, and he was replaced. What ashes of Isaac could be in front of God? Isaac was not burnt on the altar. Isaac lived a long life. Isaac was buried in the cave of Machpelah in the city of Hebron. There are no ashes of Isaac. And here Rashi goes ahead and tells us the ashes of Isaac are in front of God all the time. We have a similar statement in the Talmud. The Talmud says, Mina Yadim Mizbeach. How did they know where to put the altar in the holy temple, in the Beit HaMikdash, on the Temple Mount? And the Gemara says, Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha said, they saw the ashes of Isaac lying in that particular place, and they put the altar right where the ashes of Isaac were. What ashes of Isaac? There were no ashes of Isaac. And the answer can be found when the story of the binding of Isaac, if we look into the commentary there Rashi says that when Abraham switches Isaac for the ram, the ashes of the ram actually became the ashes of Isaac. It's as if Isaac was brought as the offering. And therefore God took these ashes of the ram, has it in front of him all time, and through those he sees the blessings of Isaac, the sacrifice of Isaac, the willingness of Isaac. And he looks through those lenses when he looks at the descendants of Isaac. And therefore God, when he looks at the Jewish people, always looks through and he remembers all the kindness of Abraham. He remembers the revolution of Abraham, how Abraham introduced God into the world. He remembers Jacob and the sacrifice of Jacob. And at the same time, he's always remembering, because it's in front of him all time, the sacrifice of Isaac. And therefore, when he looks at the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, there could never be a total separation. There could be times of exile, but never a complete severing of that relationship. As I mentioned before, it's a difficult portion to read. There are some very tough verses in the portion of Bechukosai, but it brings to mind, if you think about our history and the history of the Jewish people, we always have to look at the difficult times, but we also have to remember how we have survived the difficult times and how we have come through. And we've come through stronger, and we are stronger today than we've ever been before. You know, the first mention found in archaeology of the Jewish people outside of the Bible can be found in the Cairo Museum. There is a slab that they found in the Cairo Museum, and there engraved in this particular slab, in whatever language they found it, has the line, Israel is laid in waste, his seed is not. So the very first mention that we have found in history outside the Bible of the Jewish people is an obituary of the Jewish people, that there's no way this nation survives. Because the way the world saw us, there is no chance of survival of one lamb among 70 wolves surviving and making it through pogroms and persecutions and holocausts and communists. And yet the Jewish people, as the portion of Bechukosai concludes with, there will always be this reunion, that God will always remember the covenant, and God will always embrace the Jewish people, and miracles will always surround the Jewish people. I'll conclude with this story. The story some time ago was told by Rabbi Yitzchak David Grossman. He's the rabbi of the city of Migdal HaEmek in Israel, a very famous rabbi, a great teacher of thousands of students. And he was visited once by someone named Moti Dotan. And Moti Dotan was part of some regional council, part of the government, and he had just returned from a 25th anniversary of some pact between the regional council of his district in the Galil and the Hanover district in Germany. So he had just returned from Germany, and he came to see Rabbi Grossman on an urgent matter. He had something he needed to give to Rabbi Grossman, and he said, it's urgent that I come to you right away. And he explained that at this particular celebration that they had there in Germany, he was approached by a parliament member. The parliament member was Parliament Member Herzig, that was his name, of a German political party. It was from the SBD party, whatever that was. And this parliament member Herzig, tells Moti Dotan that I have to tell you something and I have to give you something. And he tells him that his own father had passed away just a few weeks ago. And before he passed away, he told his son that he needs to confess. He needs to confess to someone before he leaves this world, and he chose his son to confess to. That he was a member of the Nazi Party, that he was involved in the Holocaust, that he put Jews to death, and that he's feeling before his death that he needs to confess his sins, to confess his crimes, and he wants his son to know the truth about him and about his early life. And he told his son which division. He was part of the German Air Force, a very famous part of the Nazi war machine, and the role that he played. And again, this was his asking of, whether it's asking of God or asking of his family for forgiveness, but he wanted the truth out there. Hannah, you can take down the text that's on the screen. And so he tells his son that I also want to give you something. And he gives him an envelope. And in the envelope, there was a wallet. In the wallet was his license, so to say, his certificate that he had from the particular part of the Nazi war machine. So whatever part of the Air Force he was there, he had that particular certificate in this wallet. But the wallet was an odd wallet. It didn't look regular. The wallet was made of parchment. And he tells his son the following. After we wiped out a Jewish community, we always desecrated the synagogues. And we went into a particular synagogue and we took the scrolls out of the ark and we would roll it out on the floor. That was our way of desecrating the synagogue. In one of these synagogues, as we did this, I looked at the material that the scroll was made out of, and it was parchment. Parchment is valuable material. So I cut a nice piece off, and I figured I can use it. And I made a wallet out of it because it's strong material. And I've had this wallet ever since, and this is the wallet that I kept my Nazi certificate in. And so he's giving this particular wallet to his son with the following instructions. Pass this on to someone in Israel, because to them this is sacred. To them, the sacredness of their scroll never leaves the scroll. And therefore, please, as a way of my atonement, I'm asking you to pass this along to someone in Israel. So this fellow is telling Mati Dotan, that's there in Germany, here is this wallet. My father wants it given to someone in Israel that will know what to do with it. Dotan has always heard of Rabbi Grossman, so he's there with Rabbi Grossman passing on this Nazi's wallet that was made from a piece of a Torah scroll that was desecrated and rolled out on the floor. You can understand Rabbi Grossman holding on to this piece of a Torah scroll and what this meant to him. This was once part of a shul in Germany. This was once part of a Jewish community and so desecrated. But what was more shocking to him is that the letters of the Torah scroll were still there. And the particular part of the Torah scroll that was there was from the book of Deuteronomy. And it was a similar part as we have in this week's portion, talking about the consequences that will face the Jewish people and the destruction and the persecution that the Jewish people will face when they violate the covenant of God. And there he's reading this. But the last line that was there was the first line of the portion of Nitzavim, which reads, Atem Nitzavim Hayom Kulchem, translated, you stand today all together. You look at the commentary, Rashi, at that particular verse, and it says that when Moses heard the Tochacha, when Moses heard all these curses that will come to the Jewish people, Moses was shaking. And he says to God, I can't even repeat these words to the people. They're so negative, they're so down, they're so depressing. How can they survive hearing this? Says God to Moses, tell them, Atem nitzavim ayom kulchem. As soon as you tell them about the consequences, tell them the blessings. And he uses the line, you stand today, which means even after all that you will go through, you still stand. Atem nitzavim ayom kulchem. Could you imagine Rabbi Grossman reading this? In Eretz Yisrael, in the land of our dreams, in the land of our forefathers, in the land flowing with milk and honey, a land returned to Jewish leadership and Jewish establishment and Jewish freedom in our lifetime. And he reads the lines after all the consequences and the difficulties of history. Atem nitzavim ayom kulchem, you still stand. That's the message that the Torah is saying to us. Yes, it may have been a very bitter and deep and dark exile, but Atem nitzavim hayom kulchem, the Jewish people still stand. The Torah still stands. Jewish tradition still stands. We still stand. And very soon, Yaakov Avinu, Jacob, our father, is going to have to give back those letters to Eliyahu Hanavi. He's going to have to take those vavs back and give it to Elijah, because Elijah will come and Elijah will inform us indeed that the day has come for the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu, that God has remembered the covenant he made with Abraham. He remembers the covenant he made with Jacob. And Isaac's ashes are before him all the time. He remembers the sacrifice of Isaac. And he remembers the sacrifice of our grandparents and our great-grandparents and everything that they had to live through to see indeed that we still stand today. May we indeed all merit to see the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu. May we see Elijah. May Elijah blow that shofar, and then we will see Jacob returning the letters that he stole from Elijah centuries ago. And it has been holding on to it until that day comes. May that day come speedily in our days. A Shabbat Shalom to all. You should all have a wonderful, wonderful Shabbos. It should be a Shabbos of health for each, a Shabbos of miracles for all. And we'll see you Sunday morning at our pause for a prayer. Shabbat Shalom.